Imagine this. A tech professional, Yuvraj Mehta, is driving at night in Noida. All of a sudden, his car just plunges into this massive, water-filled construction pit. He's crying for help, emergency services show up, but for almost 2 hours, 2 agonizing hours, nothing happens. And Yuvraj drowns. Now, that's the horrifying story on the surface. But as you're about to see, the truth of what really happened in that pit, well, it's way more disturbing.
Okay, so let's get right into the thick of it. At the very heart of this whole case is one eyewitness, a delivery person named Maninder, and he gave 2 completely different stories. First, he tells reporters that the rescue teams basically refused to help, but then, in a video that comes out later, he's praising those exact same teams for a fast, successful rescue. You've got one event and 2 stories that are polar opposites.
So, that leaves us with this huge question, right? Which one is true? What really happened to Yuvraj Mehta in those final, terrible hours? To figure that out, we have to start peeling back the layers of this tragedy, starting with the events of that night.
Right. So let's start with what we know for sure. Let's try to piece together the timeline of that night, from the moment Yuvraj's car went into that pit.
You know, the first few moments are just pure chaos and desperation. Yuvraj's car is going under, he's screaming for help. And the eyewitness, Maninder, he doesn't just stand there and watch. He actually jumps into the dark water himself, trying like crazy to get to Yuvraj. But tragically, in that murky water, he just can't find it.
In this timeline, this is absolutely critical. This wasn't something that happened in a flash. We're talking about nearly 2 hours passing from when the car fell in to when the emergency services arrived to the final tragic outcome. 2 full hours. That huge gap of time is the first major clue in this whole puzzle.
Which, of course, brings us right back to that central mystery of the 2 statements. Why on earth would an eyewitness change his story so dramatically? Well, the answer seems to be some pretty intense pressure that was being applied behind the scenes.
And then the story just blows wide open. Maninder must have found some courage because he spoke to the Hindustan Times, and his allegation is just stunning. He claims the police themselves set up his second statement, that they handed him a script and forced him to record a video that made them look good.
Now, according to his account, this wasn't some friendly request. He describes this methodical process of being worn down. First, he's called to the station. Then, he's handed a script. Then, he's made to wait in a park for 4.5 hours. And then came the threat. He was allegedly told to just disappear for a bit. And the logic was chilling. The media would forget, but he would still have to live there, work there.
And this is the point where the story becomes so much bigger than just one tragic night. This alleged cover-up seems to point to some really deep, systemic cracks that allowed this to happen in the first place. It all starts with the road itself. This wasn't some freak accident. The source material describes the road design as just fundamentally flawed. A super sharp 90-degree turn with 0 guardrails, no warning signs. It was basically an accident waiting to happen. And the pit he fell into? Oh, it gets worse. This thing was a known, festering hazard. It was the abandoned basement of a mall project just sitting there filled with water since 2021. And even more troubling, reports from India today say this site wasn't just some forgotten pit. It was already part of an active CBI investigation into corruption. And this is unbelievable. This shows that the authorities were almost certainly aware of the danger. Why? Because just 15 days, 2 weeks before Yuvraj's fatal accident, a truck fell into the very same pit. Thankfully, that driver survived. But that incident was a direct, blaring warning that this hazard was active and deadly.
So when you lay it out like this, a really disturbing pattern starts to emerge. In that first accident, what was the response? Reportedly, they blamed the truck driver. In the second fatal accident, the response was, allegedly, to try and change the story. Do you see the pattern? The response wasn't to fix the danger. It was to manage the story.
So, when you put it all together, the flawed road, the known hazard, the prior accident, and then the alleged cover-up, it all leads to one final unavoidable question. Who is responsible for all this?
Because this wasn't just one thing going wrong. It was a complete cascade of failures. A failure in infrastructure and planning, a failure to put up the most basic safety measures, a failure in the emergency response, and then finally, an alleged failure of integrity through a cover-up and witness intimidation.
Now, the source material also raises questions about the system of governance itself. It points out that Noida operates under what's called a triple-engine government, which means the same party is in power at the local, state, and national levels.
The source also notes a specific political connection, that the district magistrate of Noida is the daughter of Ginesh Kumar, and it frames this as being relevant to the bigger picture of accountability.
And that really leaves us with one final thing to think about. Was the death of Yuvraj Mehta just a tragic, unpredictable accident? Or was it the predictable, almost inevitable outcome of a system that seems to have failed at every single possible turn?